Dr. Fauci, let me start off with you. We have many questions to get through. Is 2022 actually the year that we go from pandemic to endemic? And does Omicron speed up the process, given its ability to spread and offer immunity through infection?
Well, the answer is we do not know that. And I think we have to be openly honest about that. And when the word endemic is used in different contexts, when I talk about the pandemic, I put it into 5 phases. The truly pandemic phase, where the whole world is really very negatively impacted, as we are right now. Then there's the deceleration of the pandemic. Then there's control. There's elimination and eradication. I think if you look at the history of infectious diseases, we've only eradicated one infectious disease in man, and that's smallpox. That's not going to happen with this virus. Then there's elimination. Elimination means when you get rid of it in your own country, but it's somewhere not in your country, but it's there. For example, polio has been eliminated in the United States and many developing nations. So what's the next one up the ladder is control. Control means you have it present, but it is present at a level that does not disrupt society. And I think that's what most people feel when they talk about endemicity, where it is integrated into the broad range of infectious diseases that we experience. For example, the cold weather upper respiratory infections, the parainfluenzas, the respiratory syncytial virus, the rhinovirus, the adenoviruses. You want to get it at a level that doesn't disrupt society. That's the answer to your first question. That's my definition of what endemicity would mean, a non-disruptive presence without elimination. When you talk about whether or not Omicron, because it's a highly transmissible, but apparently not as pathogenic, for example, as Delta, I would hope that that's the case. But that would only be the case if we don't get another variant that eludes the immune response to the prior variant. For example, we were fortunate that Omicron, although it is highly transmissible, nonetheless is not as pathogenic, but the sheer volume of people who are getting infected overrides that rather less level of pathogenicity. So I really do think, Francine, that it is an open question as to whether or not Omicron is going to be the live virus vaccination that everyone is hoping for, because you have such a great deal of variability with new variants emerging.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci. Annalise, what do you think actually Omicron means for new variants? And are we focused too much on calling it an endemic? Of course, it makes things easier, and people see it as light, at the end of a difficult tunnel.
It is indeed too early to call it endemic, and I totally agree with Dr. Fauci that what people want to hear is, when can we resume our normal activities? And Omicron will not be the last variant. Clearly, with such high virus circulation as we are seeing now, there's a high probability that we will have another variant coming up. The question is where and when, and will it be more dangerous or less dangerous than the current variant of concerns? Where and when, I do think, if you have high virus circulation, that drives the risk of emergence. We've seen that for Alpha, that emerged in the UK. We've seen that for Delta in India, maybe less so for Omicron. Will it be more dangerous? Of course, we all hope it won't. And based on the evolutionary advantage to a virus, it is more likely it will attenuate. That means will further be associated with less severe disease, just based on the mere fact that a virus has an advantage. If you have high transmissibility, but you don't also kill your host at the same time. So we're all hoping for the best case scenarios that the next one will be even further attenuated. That said, I think the world needs to be prepared also for the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario would be that indeed there could be another viral recombination that would combine maybe the capacity to have high transmissibility and high mortality. That's the worst case. And I still think it is not so likely, but we have to consider all case scenarios.
Thank you so much, Annalise. Stefan, where do you think we're in the pandemic? Oh, you have to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon. Well, I don't think I have anything to add to those two infectious disease experts. What I can tell you is from the vaccine maker standpoint, what we are first very happy is that with such a change with Omicron and variants like Omicron, that the vaccines are holding very well. And the third dose are proven to be very important. What we're doing right now is to prepare for what should the vaccine be in the fall of 2022 and what should it contain. And our experts are working with public health experts like Dr. Fauci's team to figure this out, because soon we're going to have to decide what goes into the vaccine for fall of 22. The other piece we are doing, of course, is around manufacturing capacity. In 2021, we shipped 807 million doses. We're very proud that around 25% went to middle-income and low-income countries. And we're continuing to ramp up. We have a lot of capacity coming online in Q1 this quarter, with a goal to be able to make 2 to 3 billion doses for this year. And the other piece we're working on is for 2023 is how do we make it possible from a societal standpoint that people want to be vaccinated. And we're trying to do this by preparing combinations. We're working on the flu vaccine, we're working on the RSV vaccine, and our goal is to be able to have a single annual booster so that we don't have compliance issues where people don't want to get 2 to 3 shots a winter, but they get one dose where they get, a booster for corona and a booster for flu and RSV to make sure that people get their vaccine.
So, Stefan, how close are we to that, actually? One single, shot for various protection against COVID-19, but also flu?
So the RSV program is now in phase 3. The flu program is in phase 2 and soon in phase 3, I hope, as soon as the second quarter of this year. So a best case scenario will be the fall of 23. As a best case scenario, I don't think it will happen in every country, but we believe it's possible to happen in some countries next year.
Questions from everyone listening, so thank you for those. Dr. Fauci, this is basically a person writing in saying, what is the best case scenario as per the daily prediction to achieve herd immunity, combining the vaccine administration and COVID infections? How difficult is it to actually calibrate something like that?
Well, certainly the experience that we've had right now with COVID-19 and with SARS-CoV-2 is that is going to be a very difficult calculation, because when you talk about herd immunity and you talk about the protection in the community, where you combine those who've been vaccinated with durable protection and those who've been infected, recovered with durable protection. However, when you have a virus in which the infection causes immunity that seems to wane rather quickly, in addition, when you're dealing with a vaccine that's an extraordinarily successful and protective vaccine, where the immunity also wanes there. And you have then the third ingredient is a virus, which, as was recently described by several of the panelists, myself included, which has this extraordinary capability of mutating, developing new variants, and the new variants can be eluding the immune response. And we're seeing that with Omicron, where Omicron, fortunately, is not as pathogenic inherently, but when you look at its protection, particularly against infection, to a lesser degree against severe disease, it does elude the immune response. That's a different scenario than what we see when you have a virus like measles, which does not really change very much and gives you almost lifelong immunity. And you have a measles vaccine, which does not give you anything changing, but allows you to have rather lifelong protection. That's the ideal herd immunity. We're dealing with a very complicated situation here that makes our classic definition of herd immunity very elusive.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci. And Lisa, this is another question which we touched on, but basically, this person is maybe turning it a little bit more political. Should we be worried about future variants? And this person writes in, sometimes it feels like big pharma companies are taking advantage of the situation. Let me ask you, and we'll go to Stefan on this. How can we bridge the divide between believers and non-believers?
Because there are some inherent non-believers that no matter what you say are going to give you a real problem. One of the things that I believe the entire world is facing, but we certainly are facing it in a very, very disconcerting way in the United States, is the amount of disinformation that is accompanying what should be a problem where everyone pulls together against the common enemy, which is the virus. We have disinformation that is entirely destructive to a comprehensive public health endeavor. And I'm not sure how we're going to counter that except by getting out as much correct information as we possibly can and use the social media in a positive way as opposed to in the somewhat destructive way that it is being used right now.
Annelise, your thoughts? And also, there's a difference, right, between what virologists say, so looking at how worried we should be at these variants, and sometimes what politicians say, because they focus more on reopening the economy.
Well, let me share a word of optimism. We are in a different space than we were 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had a population of 7.7 billion people with zero immunity to this virus. Now, more than 50% of the world's population has received 2 doses. And this is further strengthened with now the rapid also immunity being built up by natural infection. So we're in a different space, and we now need to rethink and reevaluate some of our strategies.
Stefan, your take. First of all, there has been quite a lot of questions on pharmaceutical companies. Also, how do you encourage vaccination, right? Is there a way that companies such as Moderna need to communicate differently or put out data differently that encourages people to get vaccinated?
Yeah, so the vaccination question is, of course, a very complicated one. I mean, many public health experts and governments have tried really hard for now 2 years to get people to believe in the vaccines. And of course, there's always a better job that we can all do, starting from the companies, in terms of explaining the science, explaining the side effects, explaining the long-term benefit, and the risk-reward of getting a vaccine versus not getting a vaccine. I think a lot has been done, but clearly more can be done. But as Tony said, what is sad is all the misinformation that we are seeing every day online, sometime on TV, about the vaccine and what they do and what they don't do is really sad in today's world.
Stefan, can I ask you something specifically about some of these vaccines? And this person is also writing in, look, does a vaccine designed for Alpha or Delta also works well enough against Omicron? And how much faster have you been able to adapt some of these vaccines for every new variant?
Sure. So the vaccines that are currently available, we are doing for the original strain. They have not been adapted, that I'm aware of, to the Alpha or to the Beta strain, at least ours has not. As we've seen and shared the data very quickly when we had it, and we had a strong partnership with Dr. Fauci's team on the data generation in the fall around Thanksgiving when Omicron appeared. What was seen is we saw an important drop of neutralizing antibody after 2 doses of the vaccine. But what we saw, thankfully, is after a 3rd dose, there was very strong protection, which is why you saw around the world all the public health experts and governments urging people that had not been boosted to get a 3rd dose to protect them, especially people at a high risk. What we're doing, and we started this the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, the day we saw the sequence, is developing an Omicron-specific vaccine. That vaccine is being finished to be made. It should be in the clinic in the coming weeks. And we're hoping in the March timeframe, we should be able to have data to share with regulators to figure out the next step forward. And that's always been a great partnership between public health experts, the regulators, and vaccine makers to figure out what's the best path. As Tony said, for 2 years, we've all worked literally 7 days a week together to figure out how to fight this common enemy of the virus. The enemy is not another company or another group. The enemy has only been the virus and will stay the virus.